I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am
I am
tired,
tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
is Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
My fellow Americans, what do you say? Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Wednesday, April 23rd. Good to see you today. And welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show, coming to you live from our nation's capital, our studio right here on Capitol Hill, right in the heart of the action well, where the action usually is, except everybody's out of town except us, it seems, these days. President Obama, after visiting with the victims of that landslide in Washington State, which happened about a month ago. The president took off for Japan. He arrives in Tokyo at 7 p.m. Tokyo time, where he will immediately go to dinner with Prime Minister Abe from Japan, the first stop on his week-long tour of our friends and allies in Asia, going to Japan, to South Korea, to the Philippines, and to Malaysia for heading back here early next week. That doesn't mean nobody's in charge, however. Vice President Biden is back from the Ukraine, and he's attending meetings at the White House today. The Supreme Court yesterday, they're in town. They came out with a horrific decision yesterday on affirmative action. By 6-2, the judges ruled that courts should have no role in deciding whether or not colleges are allowed to use affirmative action as one factor in college admissions. The court said that is entirely up to voters. If they don't want affirmative action, they can vote to ban it in their state. And of course, in those states that have already done so, Florida, California, and Michigan, the number of racial minorities at their key college campuses has declined significantly. And finally, they're now saying that maybe that Malaysian Flight 370 didn't fall into the ocean after all. Maybe it landed somewhere secret and it's still there. Oh, my God. All we want to talk about with you, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Good to have you with us this morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all of the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Well, they still not found any trace of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 under the ocean. So now experts are saying maybe it landed somewhere after all. I'm telling you, check Crimea. I think Putin's got it. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, April 23rd. So good to see you this morning. You're looking good on a Wednesday morning. Everywhere in this great land of ours, we are there with you on your local progressive talk radio station. Yes, yes, yes. On Free Speech TV, if you got a satellite dish, you got us, DirecTV or the Dish Network, and worldwide. How about it? President may be in Tokyo. We're in Tokyo, too, on TawkrTV, youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKR-TV. However you're joining us, on the radio, on television, on your iPad or whatever, welcome to the program with lots to talk about this Wednesday morning. The first day of President Obama's extended, historic, 1-week-long visit to our allies and friends in Asia. We are here to bring you up to date on all the news, whether it's with the president overseas or here in this country and here in our nation's capital. Especially a lot going on at the Supreme Court yesterday. One big decision and 2 big cases that they heard. We'll get to all of it today, news of the day, and then open up the phones so you can tell us what it all means to you. Our toll-free number for you to use, 866-55-PRESS. If the phone is too complicated or takes too much time, just send us your comments on Twitter quickly, @BP Show, or on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. And you will be received by Peter Rugburn and Elisa Murphy. Hello, guys.
Good morning, good morning.
Leaders of the team here this morning, standing by to take your calls. Alicia Cruz at 866-55-PRESS. And keeping us looking good and dapper on the video stream, Cyprian Bolding, our videographer, on the job. Hey, all right, Chicago, we're sorry about it, but how about them Wizards?
How about them Wizards?
Yeah, they're still in it.
How about them Wizards?
But yeah, here we go again. 2 in a row.
They needed overtime.
Yeah, needed overtime.
But that'll do, man.
Yeah.
It's 101-99 was the final score.
Now, did they come back to Washington now, or is there one more game in Chicago?
There's a game Friday here in Washington, D.C. I can imagine that all of the people jumping on the bandwagon will be there. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But I imagine it will be a packed house.
Still some seats available?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Is this the first time for a playoff for the Wizards?
No, but it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
It's been a very long time.
Yeah.
Will the president be back by Friday?
Oh, no.
He's going to miss that game.
No, he comes back next.
You know what? If he was in town, he might go.
Late next Tuesday night, I think.
Okay.
He could go to the next round of playoffs once we beat the Bulls. Sorry, Chicago. WCPT, our good friends there. But I don't know if it's going to be a sweep. But boy, I'd love to see a sweep.
I don't know. Don't count your chickens before they hatch you. Yeah. Well, the passing of the baton last night happened officially. David Letterman welcomed his replacement, Stephen Colbert, to his program. A very funny kind of quirk of history that Stephen Colbert actually once applied to be a writer on the David Letterman show. Isn't that funny? And so back in 1997...
He finally got the job.
He submitted as an audition a top 10. And these were the top 10 Christmas cocktails for Santa. He read the list from 1997 last night, and it still holds up pretty good.
Yeah.
Number 5, no room at the gin. Chill martini glass filled with gin until there is no room for anything else. Number 4, on Comet, on Cupid, on Dasher wine spritzer. Number 3, king of the juice. Any available juice, any available liquor, wedge of matzah. Number 2, Jack Frost, equal parts Jack Daniels and Snow, seasonal. And the number 1 cocktail for Santa, Silent Night Train.
That's pretty good.
It holds up.
Yeah, it does hold up.
It's really good.
I think there's a promise there.
Yeah.
He might make it after all.
I'm very anxious to see. I think he'll do a good job. My only hesitation is we don't know, and we didn't really know what he was going to be without the character.
Right.
And so if last night was any indication, I think he'll do just fine.
Yeah.
He's a pretty funny guy.
It's David Jackson, USA Today, at the White House, joining us this hour, as he does every Wednesday morning. We'll be talking to Jeremy Holden from Media Matters. He'll be in studio with us. Media Matters under attack by Cheryl Atkinson, who says they were the ones that got her fired from CBS. And a real hero of mine, the Reverend William Barber from North Carolina. He started the great movement Moral Mondays down in North Carolina. He'll be here. He'll be here with us this morning as well. We'll get to all of that and a big, horrible decision by the Supreme Court yesterday. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Sports history was made right here in Washington, D.C. last night, just a couple of blocks away. The Los Angeles Angels were in town taking on the Washington Nationals. The Nationals lost 7-2, but the big story is the Angels' Albert Pujols hit his 499th home run of his career and his 500th home run of his career. Two homers in the same game. He is the 26th player to make it onto the 500 home run list, and he is the third youngest to do so.
Yeah, that must have been
not bad.
Cyprian, were you there?
No. He wasn't there.
Wow. Okay. We didn't have anybody there last night.
A fan caught it in the
If somebody had told me he was going to hit 500 home runs, I would have gone. I would have gone. Yeah.
That's what it takes.
A lucky fan caught the ball.
Whoa.
Which will be worth big time bucks. No word on what he's going to get for it, but we'll have that story when it's available. Every new parent knows the feeling of having a screaming, crying child in the middle of the night. We've been there, right? Why are the kids crying? Maybe they're hungry or wet or cold or lonely. Well, one Harvard biologist has a more sinister explanation. A man by the name of David Haig describes his idea in a new paper called Evolution, Medicine, and Public Health. His notion is that these children are crying to prevent the mother from getting pregnant again. In other words, the children know that they're the only source of attention, and they realize that maybe another child could take that attention away. So by making sure that the mother is sleep deprived and taking time away from mommy and daddy, that nature is taking its course and making sure that that child stays the dominant child.
It really works, by the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it could have the opposite effect, actually.
I think that history would have shown us that doesn't work. Let's try something else.
Yeah, right.
No,
baby wakes up. We have nothing else to do.
I think they're crying because they want to be. They want to show. My experience, they want to show who's in charge.
Yeah.
I may only be. I may only weigh 2 pounds, but baby.
Yeah.
I'm in charge around here.
The boss.
Yeah, I'm the boss, and they are.
The NYPD goofed up yesterday. They did the one thing that you should never do on social media: ask people for their opinion. New York NYPD News is the Twitter handle, at NYPD News. They asked, do you have a photo with a member of the NYPD? Tweet it and tag #MyNYPD. And they wanted people to put in happy photos of them with police officers. Naturally, people did not do that. They put up pictures of police brutality and New York City police officers misbehaving, things like that with the #MyNYPD. It backfired in a big, big way.
And they took it down, probably.
And then they immediately said, let's not do this anymore.
Okay. Yeah, not such a good idea.
Bad
Not
idea.
such a good idea.
Maybe they should have thought twice before they did it.
The rule of this is, if you're going to ask people what they think, be ready to hear what they actually think.
Right, exactly. Well, I want to know what you think about the Supreme Court decision yesterday on affirmative action. It is one, in my humble opinion, IMHO, it is one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever. And I just find it unbelievable that these people could actually take this position. 6 of them. Yeah, the vote was 6-2. Sonia Sotomayor showed what stuff she's made of yesterday. She wrote, not only wrote a long dissent, a blistering dissent, but she read parts of it, a good deal of it, aloud yesterday, which justices only do when they really, really feel strongly about something. So the vote was 6-2. Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg dissenting. Elena Kagan probably would have dissented, but she had been involved with this issue when she was with the Obama administration. Therefore, she had to recuse herself. And Justice Stephen Breyer, great progressive, great liberal, for some reason sided with John Roberts and Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito and Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the opinion, and Antonin Scalia on this case. I don't know what got into Breyer, because Breyer is just dead wrong on this one. Now, so here's what the court said. The court said, think this through now. It's up to voters to decide, in any state, it's up to voters to decide whether or not they're going to allow colleges to use affirmative action as one factor, which is all it's ever been, in one factor in deciding college admissions. It's up to the state. If the state wants it, okay. If the state doesn't want it, okay. The court basically says, we don't give a rat's ass, which is just outrageous when you think of it. I mean, as Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, we ought not sit back and wish away rather than confront the racial inequality that exists in our society. So just listen to this bird brain attorney general from Michigan State. He's the one who brought the case because Michigan had affirmative action, and the voters of Michigan voted to take it away, to end it. And there was a challenge to that, so the Michigan Attorney General takes it all the way to the Supreme Court. He says this, in this perverse thinking, right, he calls this outlawing, in effect, affirmative action, a victory for diversity.
We need to have diversity in our campuses, our colleges and universities across the state of Michigan and across America. And we need to achieve this diverse student population by constitutional means. That's the message of this opinion.
Yeah, and Justice Sotomayor, in her dissent, went after people like him, too, and members of the court who keep saying, we're for racial equality. There's nothing racist about us, man. We want everybody to have a fair shot. And then systematically they destroy the processes or the institutions or the practices that have been set up to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot. Now, this decision, again, in my opinion, wrong for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's wrong, meaning we know that without something like affirmative action, blacks, racial minorities, Latinos didn't have a fair shot at getting into college, particularly into state universities. And affirmative action has worked. And in fact, in the 3 states so far, California and Michigan and Florida, where voters have voted to overturn affirmative action, to ban affirmative action, minority recruitment at college campuses, minority presence on college campuses, racial minorities, has gone down dramatically, as much as 25 and 30% in California, University of California, in Michigan, and in Florida State. So it shows that without it, unless race can be considered again as one of several factors, and that's all that anybody ever says, racial minorities don't have a fair shot. So it's just basically wrong, their thinking. But secondly, what is the court for if not to take a stand? Right? So they're saying the court has no role in deciding whether or not something is right or wrong. That it's not up to us, it's up to the voters. What do they mean? Okay, segregation. Well, we may think it's wrong, but what the hell? If voters want it, put it back in Mississippi, it's up to the voters. That's what the court said yesterday. Child abuse. God, we don't like it. It's really disgusting. But you know what? The voters in Arizona want it. It's up to them. Let them decide. Slavery? Hell. We think it's wrong, but states' rights. Yeah, let's go back. Right. Alabama, let's go back to slavery, Maybe not all the way, just a little bit. It's up to the voters. What the hell is the court for if not to stand up? That's the tradition of the court. I mean, I remember in California, it was a fair housing initiative. It passed the legislature. And everybody said, well, this is great. And it passed on a statewide ballot. And everybody said, this is great. People can discriminate in whom they sell their houses to. And the court stood up and said, no, you can't. This is wrong. That's what the courts do. This court is sticking its head in the sand and saying, we don't take a stand. No, we're not going to take a stand at all. We're going to let the voters decide. Again, quoting Justice Sotomayor, you can't sit back and wish away rather than confront the racial inequality that still exists in our society. Man, this tells me how important it is, man. When you vote for president, there's nothing more important than realizing that president is going to appoint members of the Supreme Court. And we need nothing more important in this country right now than getting some new progressives on the Supreme Court and getting rid of this Roberts Court. This decision yesterday, tell us what you think about it. 866-55-PRESS here Wednesday morning on the Bill Press Show. Supreme Court says, up to the states, up to the voters. You can decide if you want affirmative action. You don't like it, just turn it over. We don't care. 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, a lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity. And one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him. Because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
This is the Bill Press Show.
27 minutes after the hour, we're talking about the Supreme Court's decision yesterday on affirmative action. What's interesting to me, if you read her autobiography, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, what is it? My Beloved World. She's very open about the fact that affirmative action is how she got into Princeton, and she knows how important it was for her and many other young men and women. Has been. Justice Clarence Thomas, of course, also admits that he got into wherever it was, Harvard or whatever, through affirmative action. Yet he opposes it, right? Because he was able to take advantage of it, but he wants nobody else to have the same advantage. The gangplank theory, we used to call that. Ken is calling out in Mount Prospect, Illinois. Hi, Ken. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's up?
I have a question in terms of the number of students that are admitted through affirmative action. How many actually graduate?
Don't know that.
Because if you go to college for 1 or 2 or 3 years and you don't get a degree, you rack up a bunch of debt, and you really have very little to show for it in terms of a documentation.
Well, you're assuming that people who get there on affirmative action don't graduate. I don't know that that's the case. Do you?
Well, no, I don't know that's the case, but I do know.
Why are you assuming that they don't?
Right. I do know that the graduation rate of people who go to college overall is not 100%. So that's
of course it's not 100%. I mean, that's a whole other problem. I mean, I don't care whether they get their affirmative action or not. We ought to do everything we can to keep them in school, but that doesn't mean you get rid of affirmative action.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis. Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC. Or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The Supreme Court, 6-2, saying, well, we're not going to take a stand on affirmative action. We'll just leave it up to the voters of the state. I mean, by this rate, you might as well just shut down the court.
Yeah.
What do you need them for, right? Let the voters decide. I mean, there's no right, no wrong anymore. It's up to the voters in each state. So you can have affirmative action in some states and not in others. You can have segregation in some states and not in others. You can have child abuse in some states and not in others. I mean, just go down the list. Yeah. The role of the court totally undermined by this decision yesterday. What the hell was Stephen Breyer thinking?
That is a good point. I mean, I think you could have the argument, right, about whether or not this should happen or not. But when the reason for upholding the ban on affirmative action is because they think that states should be able to decide, couldn't you make that argument for anything that goes to the Supreme Court now?
There are some things that states can't decide to do.
Right.
We have, that's
And
been a
shouldn't.
principle accepted in this country a long, long time ago. And you, from South Carolina, should know that better than anybody, Peter.
Thank you.
Ogburn. Just want to
Yes.
point that out. Okay. 36 minutes after the hour now. Howard, in Oxnard, California. Hey, Howard, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good. Haven't been in Oxnard in a long time.
I agree with you on that point that our government needs to intervene to keep this. If we're going to keep consistency and democracy, then there has to be people that are going to work it from the small municipalities to the large.
Yeah, right.
You see what I'm saying?
No, that's the way this country is supposed to work, right? And then we have three different branches of government, and checks and balances and everything. And the court is abdicating its role.
So, in essence, they should have never voted it down to, cities and states to decide for themselves, but they should have made it, where the government can intervene and say, well, you know what, what's available here in this small community should be available even in the metropolitan areas.
Well, yeah, but Howard, you're absolutely right. Appreciate you getting up early in Oxnard and joining us. It's just that the court yesterday just undermined any ability, I think, to achieve any significant standard in equal opportunity in this country by this decision yesterday. I mean, they basically said, yeah, there may still be racism in this country. Yeah, there still may be inequality. And yeah, we still should get rid of it. But it's not up to us. We're not going to take a stand. We'll let the voters decide what happens in that particular state. We'll let our state. And look what's happened again. This is not fairy tale, right? In Michigan State, where they banned affirmative action, CBS reported last night, the percentage of racial minorities at the University of Michigan is down 25%. All right? So, without some effort, you're never going to achieve diversity. You're never going to give people an equal shot. And it's not saying that all blacks are going to be admitted, all Latinos are going to be admitted. No. It's just saying that the college can make a special effort to make sure that the student body is as diverse as the population. Carol is out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hello, Carol.
Hi. It seems that the court is going to take and probably confirm same-sex marriage, which is wonderful. But at the same time they do this, they're taking away anything for minorities, and they're taking away anything that will help for anybody of color.
Well, it's interesting because the court had a chance to say that states cannot approve same-sex marriage. I mean, cannot deny same-sex marriage, but they didn't do that. They still have left it up to the states, Carol.
Yes, but if you look at the court cases that are coming up,
yes, right,
they're going to take and end up having to say they cannot discriminate.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
But at the same time that they're taking and doing this, it could divide us from where the gay movement and the black and the Latino movement separate because now they don't have to fight the same fight.
Right. Well, I would hope that would not happen because discrimination of any kind is wrong. And again, I think that's one thing wrong with this Supreme Court decision. As you point out, Carol, they seem to go in one direction on one issue and another direction in another. It reflects, this decision, I think, really reflects where John Roberts is coming from. John Roberts said one time, I think it was when he might have been on the court, he might have been still back in the Reagan administration, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something very close to, the way to end racial discrimination in this country is to stop discriminating against people based on race in this country. Boy, that's profound. But seriously, that was his official statement on the issue. So it's simple. You just stop discriminating. That's the way to do it. Government doesn't do anything, in other words. People just decide, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's not the way it works, John Roberts. As Sonia Sotomayor again said, you can't just wish it away, which is what the Supreme Court did again yesterday. Up in Ithaca, New York, on WNYY. Hello, Helen. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill and team. Hi.
Hey.
This is the worst Supreme Court I've seen in my lifetime.
Oh, totally. Yeah, mine too.
When I was a little kid, we had the Earl Warren Court, and he was a Republican, and they got a lot of good stuff done, you know.
Absolutely.
And this John Roberts, I listened to his whole confirmation hearings and stuff. I'm like, this guy is going to be trouble. And we just had a few weeks ago the McCutcheon decision, and we know what happened a couple of years ago with the Citizens United. And now here's another landmark screw-up decision. I can't stand the Supreme Court.
He has an agenda, Helen. There's no doubt about it. I mean, right? He has his right-wing conservative agenda, and he's using the court to drive that through on issue after issue after issue.
He is the one that Rehnquist sent down to Florida to coach in the Bush v. Gore thing, you know, to get Bush selected as president. He went down there to coach the attorneys in the Florida Supreme Court, but then it ended up in the U.S. Supreme Court.
Trouble. We need a couple of replacement appointments to the Supreme Court. Appreciate hearing from you, Helen, up in Ithaca. Hope to see you up in Ithaca soon. Mim is calling from Stony Brook, New York. Hello, Mim. Good morning.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, how are you?
Great. What I want to know is, should the Supreme Court have even agreed to hear the case?
Well, that's but the reason they did, of course, is because, again, of Roberts' agenda. I'm sure he was looking for a case where they could just get rid of affirmative action.
Yeah, and the next time the Republicans scream when there's a candidate up for approval, no legislating from the bench.
Oh, don't go there. You know, this is that old thing about what do they call those judges? The judges who legislate from the bench. There's a phrase for them.
Activist judges.
Activist judges.
Activist judges.
Mim, this is the most activist Supreme Court ever. You know, it really is. I mean, these guys have legislated from the bench on issue after issue after issue. That old attack that conservatives used to use against Democrats, democratically appointed judges, that they were all activist judges. They can't use that anymore. Yeah. Especially they can't use that after 2000, when this court decided it was going to say who was president of the United States. It was not going to leave it up to the voters of Florida or the voters of the United States who had already elected Al Gore. This court, talk about an activist court. That is a definition of an activist court. David Jackson at the White House early this morning, already for USA Today, standing by to bring us up to date on the vice president and the president this Wednesday morning. So hang in there on the Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. Truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
13 minutes before the top of the hour, Wednesday morning, April 23rd, President Obama has landed in Tokyo. First stop on his Asian tour. He was met there by a delegation headed by our ambassador to Japan, Carolyn Kennedy. David Jackson didn't make the trip. He's at the White House. Covering the White House for USA Today. Sorry, David.
Yeah, that's all right. Asians are tough. It's It's almost 8 o'clock at night in Japan. So it's a 24/7 kind of operation when you're doing these Asian trips.
Oh, I'll bet because on your deadlines you're all off, right?
Exactly. Yeah. When it seems like everything happens on deadline too, for whatever reason.
Oh man. So this is part of the so-called Asia pivot, right? Often delayed, but now finally taking place.
Well, they've been talking about an Asia pivot ever since day one, and you know the Bush administration also talked about it. So we've been pivoting to Asia for quite some time. But it's every time you go to Asia, it's always about China. That's always topic number one. Is how the other countries deal with China. A lot of the other countries out there don't like China. That gives us an opening. In this particular case, I think another concern for the administration is the fact that Japan and South Korea aren't getting along either. So there's just a lot of enmity out there in that region, and it's of concern to U.S. policymakers.
And the first thing that, the president has dinner tonight with Prime Minister Abe, but it's one of the first items on his plate, I guess, is to try to bring these two together, right? The head of South Korea and the Prime Minister of Japan.
Right, and there seems to be personal friction between the leaders of the two countries, which doesn't make it any easier. But yeah, the Japan and Abe's a very aggressive prime minister, and that's kind of annoyed Korea and vice versa. So, and of course, China doesn't like either one of them. So, a lot of personal diplomacy is going to be needed out there.
Is it kind of a snub to go to Asia without going to China at all?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. Yeah, I would think so, but I don't think the Chinese have raised any objections to it. But yeah, it's kind of unusual, I would say.
Yeah. Now,
well, certainly given the fact he's going to Korea and Japan.
This is one of the longest trips that he's taken, isn't it? I mean, he's going to be gone a full week.
Right. Yeah. Well, part of that's just getting out there and coming back. But yeah, it's and also two of these stops were ones he planned to make back in October. He planned to go to Malaysia and the Philippines, but he had to cancel that trip because of the government shutdown. So part of this is a makeup thing.
And we know that this is not the case where nobody's in charge because the vice president is back from Ukraine. Right. And he'll be at the White House today. So
exactly, I don't think we're going to see much of Congress is still on recess. I don't think we'll see much domestic activity this week. You never know, but I can't imagine anything that might happen. So it's a foreign policy kind of week here at the White House, and
now
we'll see what happens.
You've covered a few presidencies, David. Is this sort of are we seeing what happens classically or typically in a second term foreign policy legacy?
Oh, very much so, because presidents have a little more authority in foreign policy than they do in domestic policy. There's no Congress to have to worry about, and very little courts. So it's something that all presidents do. Bush did it, and Clinton before him, and I think you'll see President Obama dealing more and more with foreign policy, and he's got a lot of foreign policy on his plate, too. I think some of the things that John Kerry is doing, you might see the president try to enter into as his term winds down. Another thing, Bill, on this thing, and I think it's something you've talked about, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the big trade deal out in Asia, that's an awfully big part of this trip as well, too. I think Obama had hoped to come to Asia with a proposed trade agreement in hand, but he hasn't been able to get it done.
No, he's far from that. At our briefing Monday, the one briefing of the week, a lot of conversation about this clemency decision. It's interesting to me that in this case, the White House wanted to make sure that we understood that it was the president who directed the Attorney General to do this clemency review, correct?
Yeah. Exactly. I was surprised, and I think some people at the White House were surprised. I think there was a story in Yahoo News about this clemency process that might lead to hundreds and perhaps even thousands of commutations because of unfair drug sentencing. And it appeared to come from the Justice Department. And then, lo and behold, Attorney General Holder did a video about it, which I'd never seen before, making such a big announcement on video. But it was out there. I don't know whether they put it on YouTube or how it got out there, but it was out there. But yeah, the White House wants everyone to know this is something President Obama did, and there's proof that he did, because a couple of weeks ago, Catherine Rumler, speaking to a group of lawyers up in New York, talked about it. So, the administration's on record that President Obama ordered this review,
which could end up with a historic release of prisoners, right? I mean,
or shortened sentences. We could be talking hundreds and maybe even thousands, because the nature of drug sentencing laws has changed in recent years. So, I think they're looking back at people who were put in prison before these changes were made and seeing if they were treated fairly or not. So it's good. I think it's going to be a bunch of them, and I think it's going to be one of those big stories either at the end of this year or early next year.
The pardoner in chief, huh?
Yeah. Well, he's been people have criticized him because he's rarely used the pardon or commutation power, but I think he's going to make up for it here in the next several months.
Well, I'm sure you noticed, as I did. Here's what I thought was amusing was that they were quick to say President Obama told Holder to do this, but with Keystone, they insisted that President Obama had nothing to do with John Kerry's decision to delay Keystone.
Hope for their sake, I hope Obama had nothing to do with it. I can't believe he himself picked up the phone. You never know, but I think the State Department is aware of the score on the politics surrounding Keystone. But when we were talking the other night, it'll be interesting when the records of this administration come out, if there have been any contacts between the White House and the State Department over Keystone. That would be something very interesting to see.
I would be willing to bet the farm that there have been. I mean, that's such a political football. It just seems to me the State Department would not dare make a decision either way without checking with the White House, saying on the timing at least, right?
Exactly, and it just seems like everyone's eager to make the decision after this year's congressional elections. That's kind of been a goal here. So it's hard to escape that conclusion.
All right. Well, with the boss out of town, David, take advantage of the time to get caught up on some personal stuff, maybe. And
I'm heading up to New York to go see the LBJ play. So that's one of the things.
I'm telling you, it's great. I saw it. You will love it.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, David. Have a great weekend. All right.
Great weekend. Yeah, Bill. Thank you.
He's talking, of course, about All the Way with Bryan Cranston as LBJ. Great success. Huge on Broadway. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Jeremy Holden from Media Matters coming up at the top of the next hour. Peter?
The ghost of Republicans past has shown up in the Wichita Eagle. Bob Dole came out.
Oh, yes.
And had some choice words for Republican first-timers. He talks about Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz. He says, quote, a number of the younger members, first-termers like Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and who's that extreme right-wing guy? Ted Cruz.
Ooh.
I don't think they've got enough experience yet. Bob Dole coming out swinging on Republicans.
Bob Dole, a classy guy, I must admit, a good friend of mine. He is now on a home tour of Kansas. He said he hopes to get to every one of 105 counties in Kansas just to say thank you for all the support they've given him over the years. What a class
is
act.
the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
My fellow Americans, what do you say? Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Wednesday, April 23rd. Good to see you today. And welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show, coming to you live from our nation's capital, our studio right here on Capitol Hill, right in the heart of the action, well, where the action usually is, except everybody's out of town except us, it seems, these days. President Obama, after visiting with the victims of that landslide in Washington State, which happened about a month ago, the president took off for Japan. He arrives in Tokyo at 7 p.m. Tokyo time, where he will immediately go to dinner with Prime Minister Abe from Japan, the first stop on his week-long tour of our friends and allies in Asia, going to Japan, to South Korea, to the Philippines, and to Malaysia for heading back here early next week. That doesn't mean nobody's in charge, however. Vice President Biden is back from the Ukraine, and he's attending meetings at the White House today. The Supreme Court yesterday, they're in town. They came out with a horrific decision yesterday on affirmative action. By 6-2, the judges ruled that courts should have no role in deciding whether or not colleges are allowed to use affirmative action as one factor in college admissions. The court said that is entirely up to voters. If they don't want affirmative action, they can vote to ban it in their state. And of course, in those states that have already done so, Florida, California, and Michigan, the number of racial minorities at their key college campuses has declined significantly. And finally, they're now saying that maybe that Malaysian Flight 370 didn't fall into the ocean after all. Maybe it landed somewhere secret and it's still there. Oh, my God. All we want to talk about with you, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Good to have you with us this morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
President Obama has landed in Tokyo, met by Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, the beginning of his Asian tour. Dinner tonight with the Prime Minister of Japan. Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, that's right. They're having dinner. We're just not even have breakfast yet. Here we are on a Wednesday morning, April 23rd. Good to see you this morning, and thanks for joining us. The Bill Press Show coming out to you all across this great land of ours on your local progressive talk radio station and on Free Speech TV and worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV. Good to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us. Lots to talk about. A president's trip to Asia. What's happening here in the United States with some disastrous decision by the Supreme Court yesterday. Vice President Biden back from Ukraine. A lot of action on a lot of fronts you're going to want to talk about, so give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. And a lot of action on the media front, too, the latest media wars. Nobody better on top of it than Media Matters for America. And Jeremy Holden, Research Director for Media Matters, joins us again in studio this morning. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Bill.
Always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Be here.
You know the team, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hey.
Hey, good morning.
Alicia Cruz there. She's our army of the army, one-person army, to catch your phone calls at 866-55-PRESS, Alicia Cruz, and on the video stream and on Free Speech TV, Cyprian Balding. He's got the lights on, the cameras on, and we thank our videographer, Cyprian. So, Jeremy, last week we had in studio the director, Peter, you may remember his name, I don't, of the...
Chris Carberry.
Chris Carberry, thanks, Elisa. He's the Mission to Mars. I mean, the organization, their whole purpose is that we're going to put start colonies on Mars. You know, forget the moon. Newt Gingrich and the moon, forget that. No, colonies on Mars. So right now in Washington, he told us this is taking place, is a summit. A Mars summit is taking place as we speak. Yesterday they had the director of NASA there, Charles Bolden, and he confirms that that's what they're working toward.
We think right now, with some modest increases in NASA's budget over the years, we're going to be able to get to Mars in the 2030s.
There it is, 2030s. Sign up.
I'm in.
Not that far away.
I am in.
Yeah, 16 years away, you know.
What do I have to start doing to train? That's what I just want to know. I want to be in good. I want to be in Mars shape.
Hold your breath.
That's right.
For a long time. Yeah.
We need a Mars workout plan so that everybody can get Mars fit for the 2030.
That's right.
Let's talk to Michelle Obama about that.
Let's move.
Yeah, let's move. Right. No, they have to start planning ahead like that.
No doubt.
But he was telling, I think as I recall, it takes like 6 months to get there, and so when you're there going to be there for a while, right? It's not one of these things where they touch down, then they get back on the spacecraft and they come back. No.
Jet lag's going to be rough, I think, after 6 months flight.
Right, Obama thought it was tough going to Tokyo.
Yeah, that's right.
You just do what that kid did that flew in the wheel well, right? You go into a comatose state, right?
Time to hibernate.
Hibernation for 6 months. You wake up, hey, you're there.
You know...
it really feels like a 4-month trip at that point.
Right.
Much easier.
But, you know, we were in Honolulu last month. Everybody knows I took a week off. I took my family to Honolulu. But I've already told them that next year, they're not going economy. They're flying wheel well.
Becomes a budget trip at that point.
That's right.
It really does,
That's right.
So Jeremy Holden here with us from Media Matters, his first half hour. Will Dobson from Slate joins us to take a look at the Ukraine and Syria at the half hour. And the next hour, the Reverend William Barber, who is the founder of the Moral Mondays movement down in North Carolina, will be along to tell us how they're doing and what the latest is. We'll get right to it. But first,
this
the big stories
is the
of the day.
Full Court Press.
Bill, IKEA sells 150 million meatballs each year. They're made of pork and beef. Now, you can imagine that would create a lot of animal...
Like frozen?
Well, they are. Some are frozen.
Yeah.
You can buy them at the counter hot, like if you want to go buy out like a lunch. But they do sell them frozen there. So in an effort to go green and be better for the environment, they have a new idea. Vegetarian meatballs.
Oh, get out.
Vegetarian meatballs. They're going to be the same meatballs with a little sauce.
It's like a tofu hot dog.
It's exactly what it is. It's made out of tofu and other plant material that they're turning into meatball. They say that it's as good as the meatball. They're going to be in IKEA starting in 2015.
Oh, God, this drives me crazy. First of all, it's not as good. Tofu's just disgusting. But secondly, if you're a vegetarian, then be a vegan. Be a vegetarian. Don't feel you have to eat phony steak, phony hot dogs, phony meatballs. I'm sorry, you're a vegan, aren't you?
I'm not. No, I'm gonna take your word for it that it's just as good though. And
Yeah.
I won't find out.
If I have the option,
take his word for anything.
Well, yeah, don't take my word for it. That's a lot. But if I have the option to get a regular meatball and a vegetarian meatball, I'm going to go with the real meatball.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Hence the name meat.
Meatball. You
Have
can't
a
really call it a
meatball.
meatball anymore, can you?
No. Have a meatball or have a piece of broccoli. I mean...
I like
No, I do too, but all I'm saying is, you're a vegan, be a vegan. Be a vegetarian. Be proud of it.
That's right. Happy birthday, 9 years old, to YouTube. April 23rd, 2005. Jawed Karim, one of the co-founders of YouTube, put up the very first YouTube video, 18 seconds long, of him standing in front of an elephant enclosure at the zoo, and says, all right, so here we are in front of the elephants.
Wow.
It's 18 seconds long. He put that up 9 years ago today. It's come a little bit farther than that since then.
That's older than Media Matters.
I feel old. Yeah, I do. At this point, I feel my age at this. It's moments like this.
Yeah.
But this has really changed the media in many ways. Right?
my God.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
revolutionary.
To think of how far we've come in 9 years when you look at outlets that only exist with internet video now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a #1 search engine.
And we're on YouTube, Mr. People.
I was just
we're
going
on
to say,
YouTube right
and
now.
TawkrTV.
That's right.
We have a YouTube channel. Right.
Yeah, it's not optional at this point.
Yeah,
You
no,
need
it's
to.
not.
I mean, if you
You're
wanna see-
exactly
you have to
right.
get it.
You're exactly right. Palcohol, Bill. Have you heard of Palcohol?
No.
It's powdered alcohol. The creators said that you can bring in alcohol in powder form into sporting events so you don't have to pay the high prices. You can just get water or whatever mixture you'd like and stir it into it, and it becomes an alcoholic beverage. Here's the thing. The Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau approved Palcohol, except a day later they said, oh, whoops, we issued those approvals in error. So after the company went out and said, you can now buy this, it's been approved, it's safe to use, they now went back and said, yeah, you can't buy this anymore. So now they're having to fight to figure out whether or not it's legal or illegal, but there is Palcohol out there if you
What's
want to
this,
try.
like beer? Wine?
Well, it's
cocktails.
It's more cocktails, right? I mean, it's flavored in different ways. Like
powdered
there's a beer
margarita?
flavor, there's a strawberry flavor, and you dump it into whatever you want to mix it into, and then you have alcohol.
I actually heard they were going to call it Cristal Light.
Get out of here!
You know what? I don't want any more of these food stories from you.
No more of that.
We got phony meatballs and phony booze.
Phony alcohol.
Phony alcohol.
Get a real meatball and get a real some real gin and bourbon, and there you go.
Can we get to some serious matters here? So I want to know, why is Media Matters picking on Cheryl Atkinson?
Well, we've taken issue with some of Cheryl Atkinson's reporting, and when
she was a correspondent at CBS.
That's right. She parted ways at CBS.
How long ago?
A few months ago. It was a little bit ahead of contract schedule, and this came after a string of somewhat embarrassing and really tense instances of Cheryl Atkinson really pursuing kind of a lot of the right-wing boogeymen of our time, right? She was way out in front on some of the Benghazi reporting, really helped drag CBS into that, pushing a lot of the fraudulent stories at the center of that Benghazi hoax. She was very adamant about this Cylindra canard that the right is always pushing. Right? There's this solar energy company that got a loan from the Energy Department.
That went bust.
It went bust.
Yeah.
But the overall success rate of the government's investment in clean energy has been, either on par with or ahead ahead of private industry investment in this field. But way out in front that this was some type of scandal that one company went bust out of all the developments. And we looked into some of her reporting on Solyndra, on Benghazi, Fast and Furious, and found some flaws in it. And now that Cheryl Atkinson is out at CBS and she's on a media tour, she's pointing the finger at us and actually claiming that we're somehow it's like there's a line item.
She said you were paid to take her on.
Yeah,
right?
Paid specifically to target her.
Right.
She has no evidence of this, right? But she's out there. So again, it falls in line with a lot of the reporting that got her in trouble at CBS. No evidence, just out there throwing claims out there. And I think you see this is the kind of reporting that we see more on Fox News, not on CBS.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, when I saw this, I thought it's pretty clear. She's auditioning for a job at Fox, isn't she?
It seems to be the case. I mean, a lot of her this media tour that she's been on, a lot of her early appearances were on Fox News. Now, she was on Reliable Sources on Sunday. She did Morning Joe earlier this week. But, her first foray into this media tour was largely Fox News. And I think a lot of the reporting that she's been doing, lashing out at us without any evidence, and again, some of the reporting that got her in trouble at CBS is more akin to what we see at Fox News.
Yeah, it is funny to accuse you of being paid, to take her on.
I looked at my paycheck to see if there was a line item of, the Cheryl Atkinson portion of my paycheck, and it's not in there.
No. Now, you've also written, Jeremy, lately about, which we've noticed, even this morning on the Monitor, we saw that Fox News was talking about the big Bundy Ranch scandal out in Nevada.
Yeah, and they're really all in on this.
Oh, they are, totally. They are as into Bundy Ranch as CNN is into Malaysian Flight 370.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we went and looked just on their prime shows, right? The O'Reilly, Hannity, the Megyn Kelly show, 4 hours of coverage in a little over a week on the story. And it's one thing if look, there's a lot of interest in this story, but the tone of Fox's coverage is just pro Cliven Bundy. Now, here's a rancher who for 2 decades has refused to pay his bills, right? I mean, that's basically what this boils down to. Every other rancher in the country, 16,000 ranchers, pay fees to graze on public lands. Cliven Bundy, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't believe in the federal government. You would think that Fox News would they're all about law and order. People who violate, who they think are outside the law, right? I mean, every day we hear from Fox News, President Obama is lawless. Go back to the Occupy movement, and they were upset about people camping in a park. A rancher doesn't pay his bill for 20 years, and Fox News thinks it's patriotic. They're turning this guy into a folk hero, and they're celebrating the fact that armed militia members are flooding to this ranch to force a standoff with the federal government. Fox News is basically the carnival barkers at the range war.
Yeah. No, I mean, the idea, I at first I wasn't sure what this was about and look into it. I mean, it is as simple as you say. These are public lands. He's grazing his cattle on these public lands. So we all own these public lands. He's stealing money from us, right?
Yeah.
He's using our land without paying us for it. And as you say, every other farmer in the country, where we live in California, farmers graze on some national seashore property. They pay the federal government for grazing their cattle because they get all the benefit, all the profit out of the cattle, right? All we get is the rent for the land.
Right.
Yeah, this guy refuses to do it, and then Fox says he's a hero because he's breaking the law.
And the people the armed people who show up are somehow patriots.
Right.
Well, and once the Bureau of Land Management, once the federal government kind of backed down and stopped the cattle confiscation,
anyhow.
A court order says confiscate the cattle, recoup the money that this guy owes you and won't pay. The Bureau of Land Management backed down because they didn't want to engage in a shootout, basically. And so then Sean Hannity hosts The Rancher after this ends and asks him if he worries that federal agents are going to break into his house in the middle of the night and kill him. I mean, it's the height of irresponsibility that we see over on Fox News. I don't understand their angle on this one.
I find it interesting when you think back on the coverage of the Occupy protesters, who, for the most part, it was nonviolent, and they certainly weren't showing up armed. And militia members, and who were saying we're getting screwed. The entire country is getting screwed here, right? And they were made out to be degenerates, mutants, Occupy freaks that were out there. And then this guy who's a joke. I mean, his case is a total joke. And now he's some sort of hero, some folk legend that they're building here on Fox News.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because he is occupying public land.
Right.
And he is being protected by people with assault weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're heroes. God, I'm telling you. But Fox loves it. And CNN loves a missing plane. They're still at it this morning as well. Jeremy Holden's here. He covers this media. I always say about Media Matters, they listen to Rush Limbaugh so we don't have to. That's why we love them. MediaMatters.org. And Jeremy Holden's here. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, a lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity. And one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him. Because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour here, Jeremy Holden is with us from Media Matters. At the half, we're going to be talking with Will Dobson from Slate about the situation in the Ukraine and other foreign policy issues. Jeremy, on the media front, I was very struck by an article in Politico last week about all the money that the conservative talk show hosts are getting from right-wing organizations, particularly Tea Party, Koch brothers funded organizations, for featuring conservative candidates on their shows and promoting Tea Party issues, basically. That they're not doing it because they believe in it. They're doing it because they get paid for it.
Yeah, and I think what the folks over at Politico show is not just your basic, we're going to do a live read for Americans for Prosperity, right? I mean, something that's not uncommon.
Right.
You know, we'll do an on-air read for all the great works that Americans for Prosperity do. This isn't about advertising on the show, but what they show is how some of these hosts, Mark Levin, for example, how he took a position, particularly about a Senate race in Utah, lost some funding from an organization. Koch money came in. The Americans for Prosperity came in. And then you see Mark Levin completely shift his position on the topic that's more, and so now he's more in line with his new funding base, right? So this isn't just about we're going to do an on-air read. This looks like buying allegiances, right? This looks like radio for rent from folks like Mark Levin, from folks like Sean Hannity, right? Sean Hannity announced about a year ago that he was going to play a very active role working with Tea Party groups in 2014. And what we see from Politico is a lot of the big money behind some of the larger Tea Party organizations directly funding Sean Hannity's radio show. And then that transitions to what Sean Hannity says on Fox News. And now we're sharing an online platform to help promote your candidates. It's dirty.
No, it is. It is radio for. If this were taking place like in the United States Congress, right, or in a state legislature or something, it would be called bribery.
It's
Right?
It's radio for rent, basically.
Yeah. They can't buy us off. I'll tell you one thing. They can't buy us progressives off. Well, it depends on what the price is, I guess.
We're willing to look at the model, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't exist on our side,
doesn't. It really
and they are bought lock, stock, and barrel. Jeremy Holden, great work. Media Matters, MediaMatters.org. Thanks,
This is
Jeremy.
the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis. Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, "Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture."
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. You know, I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org. to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour. Good morning, Wednesday morning, April 23rd. The Bill Press Show coming to you live from our nation's capital, brought to you today by the American Federation of Teachers. Good men and women, teachers of America, under President Randy Weingarten. Making a difference in the classrooms of America every day, you bet. And you can find out more about their good work at their website, aft.org. President Obama has arrived at his hotel in Tokyo. He will be leaving soon to meet Prime Minister Abe for dinner, the first stop on the president's trip to Asia, week-long trip to Asia, historic trip, part of the pivot to Asia the White House has been talking about for some time. Will Dobson is the politics and foreign affairs editor for Slate magazine, joining us on our news line this morning. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. I want to talk about Asia, but first, the president almost wasn't able to make this trip because of ongoing events in Ukraine. Have things settled down there in eastern Ukraine, or still as tense as ever? How do you read it?
Still as tense as ever, to be honest. I mean, it hasn't settled down at all. But the problem for the president, in part, was that he has not been able to take this trip to Asia multiple times.
Right.
I mean, the last time he tried to go was during the government shutdown, and so it was scuttled for that. And so this is actually his third attempt at making this trip. So the bar was going to be pretty high for, basically staying grounded this time. And I don't think you can wait for Putin to settle down if you ever want to go to Asia.
So we had this meeting in Geneva last week. The agreement seemed pretty positive, right? That the demonstrators are going to leave the buildings, they would get amnesty and all that kind of, lay down their weapons. None of that has happened.
No, shocking. I mean, this was, a week ago I was hopeful, but I don't think that it was ever really a concrete, real agreement. I mean, at the end of the day, this was a very vaguely worded, aspirational type of document, because the reality is the pretext, the situation on the ground that the Russians have created is just the sort of scenario where it's very easy to say, look, the other side isn't doing as they said. Their entire strategy is about obfuscation and and creating facts on the ground. So this is something that could very easily unravel, and I don't think you could really say that it ever really took effect at all. I think if you're in those eastern Ukrainian cities, you would never know that an agreement was hatched in Geneva or that had any meaning for events there at all. And so very quickly the Russians, started accusing the other side of not honoring it. The armed separatists said, we weren't a party to these talks. It only further legitimates them as if they are an independent force and not an appendage of the Kremlin.
Is there any doubt in your mind that these masked protesters, some of them at any rate, in the eastern Ukraine are really Russian intelligence agents?
Not an iota, not at all. I mean, if we even had any doubt, we could just take Vladimir Putin's word for it, which is that, last week in his televised talk, he admitted that although he denied for weeks and weeks that those were his military officers in Crimea, last Thursday he admitted that they were. So, but he said, but actually in eastern Ukraine that's not the case. Oh, okay. So it's always, he'll tell us, he'll fess up eventually. But this is coming right out of their playbook. People, one difference between now and say, in earlier times in history is you can actually, people are actually going online and they're finding the images of people and finding them at other protests. And these are people that are well-known activists in Moscow. So they're literally being shipped in. And the one thing that's kind of, that is noticeable is that the size of the protests in relative terms are really small. Because, you can manufacture something with 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. The protests that happened in Kiev, 6 months ago that launched this whole thing, those were protests with more than 100,000 people.
Right.
So,
well, now, whatever we think of what Russia is doing, it's from their perspective, it's proven pretty effective, hasn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Look at Crimea, and they're saying these are Russian people who speak Russia and their loyalties to Russia, and they don't want to be part of this other Ukraine.
You're right. As a strategy, yes, it's working very well. And I think to the core of its success, though, why is this succeeding? Why, could this happen anywhere? There are a lot of Russians in Queens. Should we be worried? No. Because the difference, the core here is that for Russia, this is Ukraine borders Russia. For the Russians, Ukraine has always been an existential issue, and so what has prompted this is that the effort, the struggle, the tug of war over Ukraine, Putin felt that he finally was losing it when Yanukovych was getting close to signing that EU agreement. And so at that point, he said, okay, all bets are off. Now we have to wrestle this back. And so this is what this is. He wants a vassal state, and he's trying to create it.
And Russia, and he knows that the United States nor our Western European allies are willing to go to war over.
Right, exactly. He knows territory. It matters more to him than it does to anyone else, and that gives him a latitude of movement that he's willing to take advantage of.
So so now the president has kind of put that as behind him.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's off. What does he hope to accomplish, or what can we hope to see out of this week-long trip, other than, I guess, good feelings all the way around?
Yeah, honestly, for this president right now, it's a success that he was able to get off the ground. So unfortunately, this is an improvement right away because he will be going to a sushi dinner shortly with Prime Minister Abe, and it's the Japanese have selected a restaurant that only seats 10 people. A remarkably informal choice for the Japanese who are trying to really build up that warmth with the president. It's going to be difficult to really any agreements that come out of this trip are an extraordinary thing in itself because all parties are somewhat distracted here. You've got, as you mentioned, President Obama there who's really thinking about European land grabs and the fact that in Syria the chemical weapons attacks appear to have restarted. And then in the case in Japan, they're concerned about China. They're concerned about South Korea. Tensions within East Asia are rising, all territorial concerns. And the concern on the part of many Asian leaders is, based on what has happened in other parts of the world, are American security commitments still as strong as they once were? And so they'll be sussing that out, while at the same time in South Korea, they are domestically overwhelmed right now with the disaster with the ferry. And so there's a lot of, they're distracted by their own domestic events. But the things that are on the table are, talking about North Korea, again talking about Chinese territorial ambitions. And so as you go, this is just, it is a web of issues right now that are really difficult for all sides. So it's anything but simple.
Will there be any progress made on the TPP? Was that part of this trip?
Well, I mean, to be fair to the Asian side of the equation, the president isn't exactly going over there able to say that he's got support for it really in Congress. So
does not have that support.
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day, I mean, the administration would love to say, hey, if you guys just give us the green light over here, we can make this thing happen over there. I mean, everyone knows there's no momentum, even in the president's own party, for a trade deal right now. So it's not like he can offer much. I think that there's hope that there will be some smaller trade agreements that they hope to use to build momentum, and that those would, if they're going to come out of anywhere, they'll come out of Japan. That's something that Abe wants. He has been trying to open the Japanese economy, and so in that sense, at least they're kindred spirits in where they want to go.
And finally, Will, we're talking with Will Dobson from Slate, Slate.com. Is it a mistake to go to Asia without at least stopping in China?
No, it's not. It's great. I'll tell you, I'll tell you what, it's great, because it really, right now, what we're getting out of China is really concerning in relation to what their behavior towards our allies. So it's actually, I would say that, the only thing that's questionable on his agenda in terms of places to go while in Asia is Malaysia. This isn't a government that really should be rewarded, in my opinion, with a presidential visit, not just because of their ham-handed rescue efforts, but because it's a one-party regime that is incompetent and there because they rigged the last election. The other countries that are there are all really strong, stalwart American allies, the Philippines, South Korea, and Japan. And they deserve, they really have waited for a president who has said that he has strong interest in Asia and wanted an Asian pivot. They've waited and waited, and it's important for the United States to give those Asian allies some face time and let China wonder what they're talking about.
I love it. Will Dobson, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much
for
your time this morning and your insights. Okay, as always, Will Dobson, Slate, Slate.com.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed in this moment in history to stand alongside of these protesters. Truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
13 minutes before the top of the hour. In the next hour, Elizabeth Wydra will be joining us from the Constitutional Accountability Center. She's our go-to person on the Supreme Court. And we'll talk to her about the big decision on the Supreme Court yesterday on affirmative action. More on that in just a moment. But we'll also be joined by the Reverend William Barber, whom all of our good friends down in Asheville, North Carolina on 880 The Revolution know well. He is the head of the NAACP in North Carolina and the man who began the big movement down there called Moral Mondays to protest some of the drastic right-wing actions by the North Carolina governor and legislature, particularly in the area of voting rights. Looking forward very much to meeting Reverend Barber and getting together with Elizabeth Wydra. So a big third hour coming up here. On the political front, birds of a feather, I guess. Interesting to note that former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, he has been, of course, indicted in January. He was indicted on charges of bribery and fraud. He and his wife were both indicted on charges of bribery and fraud. He now faces trial. He could go to jail. He got some help yesterday for his legal defense fund. $10,000 check from Mitt Romney. And of course, it's I scratch my back. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. McDonnell supported Romney, of course, in 2012, and now Romney. It's a little payback. A couple of things for me about that. Number one is Romney's a billionaire. I mean, $10,000. Jesus.
He should be giving more.
Yeah. I mean, remember? Yeah. He's the guy who said to Rick Perry, hey, I'll bet you $10,000.
$10,000.
So for him, $10,000 is nothing.
Is nothing.
No, it's like $1. Right?
I bet you a Coke, he bets $10,000.
Right. So, I mean, it's not giving him much money. Number one, cheapskate. Spending. Yeah, he'll spend $1 million on that freaking car garage. Car elevator, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But the other thing is, the guy's a crook. He's giving money to he's been indicted for stealing money, right? He and his wife from this. Anyhow.
Of all the people to get in bed with.
All the people, exactly. It was something. The guy was seriously in trouble, had some problem with his family or something. You're helping a guy out, that's one thing. But this guy's, come on, Mitt Romney. So, the mentioned, we will talk in much more detail with Elizabeth Wydra at the top of the hour about this affirmative action decision. But just got to get into it a little bit here, because I think that what the Supreme Court did yesterday is one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever. I mean, this is right up there with Citizens United and Plessy v. Ferguson. This decision on affirmative action. It was a 6-2 decision. Important to know how the bodies, how the justices lined up on this one, because the two are Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Ginsburg. Elena Kagan would have been number 3, but she had been involved in this issue as Solicitor General under President Obama, and so therefore she had to recuse herself. But Stephen Breyer, great liberal and progressive, voted with the conservative majority, voted with Clarence Thomas, voted with Antonin Scalia, voted with John Roberts. Why? I don't know what got into to Stephen Breyer on this issue, because it is a bad decision. And here's what the justices said, 6-2. They said that it's up to voters whether or not a state, colleges in any particular state colleges can use affirmative action as one of the factors in determining college admissions. That's all affirmative action has ever been, one of the factors. And whether or not affirmative action applies in any given state, it's not up, they said, not up to the legislature, not up to the college administrator, not even up to the courts. It's up to the voters. Let the voters decide. The court said that we as a court have no role whatsoever in making that decision. And so if Michigan doesn't want affirmative action, the voters of Michigan vote it down. That's fine. Voters of Colorado, California vote it down. Yeah, we don't care. We don't give a rat's ass. Voters of Florida vote it down. Yeah, so what? I mean, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she admits, and she talks about it in her autobiography, My Beloved World, she talks about the fact she got into Princeton because of affirmative action. And she recognizes how important it was to her and to millions of other young Americans of color. And Sonia Sotomayor knows it's still important today. She wrote a blistering dissent to this and read a good deal of that dissent out loud at the court yesterday to show how strongly she felt on this. I mean, one of the statements that struck me is she said to these justices who are saying, let's let the voters decide. We're not going to take a stand. We're not going to decide whether it's right or wrong. We'll let the voters make up their mind. Sonia Sotomayor, quote, "We ought not sit back and wish away rather than confront the racial inequality that exists in our society." And that's exactly what the court was saying yesterday, it seems to me. You know what? Child abuse. Yeah, well, we may not like it, but let the voters decide. On the court? No, it's not our job to say yes or no. Let the voters decide. Segregation? Yeah, it's, God, we hate to see it come back, but it's up to the voters. Voters of Alabama want it. Let the voters decide. Exactly what the court said yesterday. And Stephen Breyer went along with that? This is idiotic. I'm telling you, this is why it's important whom we vote for president. This is why it's important to have a Democratic president and more Democratic voices in the Supreme Court to get rid of this John Roberts court. With that, we'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Now, hour number 3, getting ready to appear here. So, we're going to lose you on Free Speech TV. You can go over to TawkrTV to stay with us at youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. For a long time, we've been hearing about this great movement called Moral Mondays that started in North Carolina to protest the actions of the legislature there. The founder of Moral Mondays in North Carolina, the Reverend William Barber, is going to be our guest in this next hour. You won't want to miss it. Go to TawkrTV. Stay with us for hour number 3.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years. I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live.
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, President Obama arrived in Tokyo. He has arrived at his hotel. He will soon be joining Prime Minister Abe for a sushi dinner tonight.
Oh, very nice.
Will Dobson informed us it's a tiny restaurant, seats 10. You sure they got enough room for the president and his party? I don't know. By the time they get the translators and the security in there, I don't know. There it is. That's the beginning of his Asian tour. That's the president's schedule for tonight. Vice President Biden, meanwhile, is back from the Ukraine, and he will be conducting meetings at the White House, holding meetings at the White House today. I think anything could happen. President out of town, Joe Biden in charge at the White House. He might decide to have a state dinner tonight.
Biden time.
Who knows? It's
This
Biden time.
is the Bill Press Show.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, we come to work. That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governor should come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. Not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I haven't opened the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100 and I'm 81 years old. And I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here, we've been here for 26 years, we're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough, they adapt, but only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not gonna let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or whatever. We're gonna fight to the bitter end. Detroit gonna survive.
online. This is The Bill Press Show.
President Obama in Tokyo, out to sushi dinner tonight with Prime Minister Abe, the beginning of his Asian tour. And it's morning in Washington, D.C. Good morning, everybody. April 23rd, Wednesday. Good to have you with us today, and great to see you. Even though the president's out of town, lots to talk about. Supreme Court, very, very busy yesterday, hearing 2 cases and deciding a third. We'll tell you all about that and everything else happening this morning here on the Bill Press Show, and then open up the phones and give you a chance to comment at 866-55-PRESS. Tell us what it all means to you. Again, good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Coming to you live from our nation's capital with our team here, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, good morning.
Alicia Cruz there on the phones at 866-55-PRESS. And on our video stream worldwide, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TawkrTV. I mean, hell, if President's in Tokyo, we're in Tokyo too. He's at the sushi restaurant. We're at TawkrTV. That's right. So that's thanks to Cyprian Bolding, our videographer. And it's a special guest to talk about the Supreme Court's activity yesterday. We're delighted to welcome back to the studio Elizabeth Wydra, who is Chief Counsel for the Constitutional Accountability Center. Hello, Elizabeth.
Great to be with you,
Nice
Bill.
to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Feeling good. First time in 2014, I think.
No.
Yeah, I think so.
We had her on the phone before.
On the phone.
Yes, that's right.
That's
right.
That's what
wow.
it was. Yeah, how about that? So a big transition. You know, we've all been talking about David Letterman deciding he's going to step down next year. Who was going to take his place? Didn't take CBS long. Stephen Colbert. Last night was the official kind of passing over the baton. Stephen Colbert appearing as David Letterman's guest and revealed something very funny that I didn't know, that back in 1997, Stephen Colbert then applied for a job as a writer on the David Letterman show. And he was asked for his audition. I'm surprised he didn't get the job, by the way, but he was asked to write model top 10. So he did a top 10. It was the Christmas season. He did a top 10 cocktails for Santa Claus. And last night, he pulled out this 1997 submission that he had given to the brass, whatever, at the Letterman show, and read them on the air.
Number 5, no room at the gin. Chill martini glass filled with gin until there is no room for anything else. Number 4, on comment, on Cupid, on Dasher wine spritzer. Number 3, king of the juice. Any available juice, any available liquor, wedge of matzah. Number 2, Jack Frost, equal parts Jack Daniels and Snow, seasonal. And the number 1 cocktail for Santa, Silent Night Train.
You know what's great about that is they hold up.
Yeah, exactly.
They're as funny today as they were in 1997.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Having heard that last night, I think Stephen Colbert is going to be okay.
I think we're in good hands.
Yeah.
I think we'll be in good hands.
All right, yeah. Tough shoes to fill, but if anybody can, Stephen Colbert can. So Elizabeth is here with us to talk Supreme Court at the top of the hour. At the half hour, we're going to be talking with the Reverend William Barber from North Carolina, NAACP leader from North Carolina, who started the great Moral Mondays movement in North Carolina. Very excited to meet him for the first time. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple other stories making news. You mentioned the president and his sushi dinner today. Yes. What I didn't realize, I just found out, he's dining at Tsukiyabashi Jiro, which is the focus of the great documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix.
This guy is 90 years old.
He's 88 years old.
Yeah.
Jiro Ono.
Yeah.
No, he's close to 90. It's a phenomenal documentary if you haven't seen it. So this is just one more chapter to a legendary sushi restaurant that he's preparing sushi for the President of the United States.
They said there are 10 seats in this restaurant. Imagine how much the sushi costs.
Yeah. It's expensive.
Caroline Kennedy and Susan Rice are there with him. Plus, I must have a translator, so they're going to fill it.
That's like already 10 people.
Yeah. Exactly. What's interesting about the restaurant is, as you see in the movie, it's in sort of a basement of an office building, and it's just around the corner from the train station, so it's a very busy area, but it's very unassuming. You're just like a fluorescently lit hallway, and then boom, there it is.
I also found it funny that the press pool is holding nearby in a Belgian restaurant.
Oh, no.
You go to Tokyo and you're stuck in a Belgian restaurant?
That sucks.
Waffles.
That sucks.
Did you know The Apprentice in that movie just opened up a New York restaurant?
Is that right?
Yes, we have our own little version here.
Very nice. See, he went all the way there. He could have just gone to New York. You know what I mean? Are parents spending too much time on their electronic devices? Well, you can choose after this new study from the University of Minnesota. It says that parents spend an average of 11 hours in front of electronic devices. This means computers,
11 hours
smartphone. It's in front of electronic devices.
But a week?
Yeah, a day.
Get out of
11
here.
hours a day.
Get out.
Wait, including work.
Including work. It makes sense. It makes sense. When you
including
think
work,
about you're in front of
yeah.
a computer, you're in front of your phone, you're in front of a TV.
Right.
And so what they're saying is kids are having a harder time picking up on social interactions because parents are so busy talking to them and disciplining them while they're looking at their phone, or they're having dinner or watching TV, things like that.
The answer is to get all the kids an iPad.
Make them conform.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the NBA playoffs continue. The only game we're going to mention are the Washington Wizards last night, winning Game 2 against the Chicago Bulls.
Stop picking on Chicago.
In Chicago,
we have to talk. We have to respect our friends at WCPT.
WCPT, we
all
love
our good
you.
friends in Chicago. Talk about some other playoff.
They got their backs up against the wall as the series comes back to Washington for the next two games. Washington Wizards won in overtime, by the way. 101-99 is the final score.
Keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive.
All right. Well, Elizabeth, the Supreme Court hearing two cases yesterday and deciding one. The affirmative action decision is the one that's getting all the attention. I don't understand this decision, I must say. 6-2. It seems to me what the court said in this decision, that allowing voters to decide whether or not a state applies affirmative action or not. It's just like basically the court saying, we just wash our hands of the whole mess. We don't care what happens.
Yeah, so there are a lot of interesting things going on with this decision. There are several levels to this opinion. So the plurality, which is just Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the decision, Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito, they tried to make the case very simple, saying this isn't about the constitutionality of race-conscious admissions programs. We're not touching those precedents that have said that some of those programs are okay. This is just about whether you can have the voters of a state pass a constitutional amendment that forbids racial preferences in public education. So they're trying to say, oh, this is just about democracy.
Well, they tried to say that about Bush v. Gore in 2000, too, some of them, right? Some of the same ones.
Well, and it's what I think is interesting is that they say there are these other cases that say that you can't sort of jigger the game rules for decision-making by passing certain laws that hinder certain minority groups from getting access to the law and justice. And when there's an actual harm to a particular racial group, then that's something that will take seriously. So I think what's interesting is that if you look underneath their sort of, oh, this is just about democracy, you get at sort of their views about whether race-conscious admissions policies are important and worthy or not. Because if they were something like equal access to housing, that was one of the other cases that they said was important. So clearly that's important. But it seems like what's going on here is that there is a majority of conservative justices on the court that just don't think it's that important to have race-conscious admissions policies.
Well, what happened to Stephen Breyer in this case? I mean, what the hell is he doing with voting with Roberts and Clarence Thomas and Antonin Scalia? And others.
It's very interesting. And he wrote a separate opinion that concurs in the judgment. So that's sort of like he agrees with the result, even if he doesn't agree with the reasoning of the other justices, the conservative justices. But I think what he was trying to do is sort of narrow the reach of the ruling But his opinion doesn't do that because he's the only one who signed on to it.
Yeah. Well, then you got Sonia Sotomayor, a blistering dissent, who says basically, yeah, I know affirmative action is important because that's how I got into Princeton. And I've seen, and I know millions of other people who've also been helped by affirmative action. It's never, it doesn't say, if you're black, you get into UC Berkeley, right? It just says that that's one thing they can consider to try to have more diversity on campus. And I love Sonia Sotomayor where she concludes, we cannot sit back and wish away rather than confront the racial inequality that exists in our society. And she's accusing the court that that's exactly what they're doing, is just sort of turning their head the other way.
Yeah,
right?
so this is so fascinating. So Justice Sotomayor, first of all, there's a sort of tradition in the Supreme Court that when the court announces its rulings, the person who gives the opinion for the court will read it out loud.
Yeah.
And sometimes, but it's actually quite rare, the dissenting justice will read a statement from the bench. And Justice Sotomayor has never done this before in her tenure on the court. It's about 4.5 years, I think. And she actually gave an interview last month with Linda Greenhouse saying that she just didn't think that was really something that really should be done, even though it was sort of a testament to how fiercely you believed in these positions. So for her to read from the bench yesterday, not just any dissent, but this particular dissent that does touch so close to home, she wrote about this, she's spoken about it extensively, shows just how passionately she believes in what she wrote in her opinion. And I think one of the most powerful things, as you said, Bill, is that she is speaking directly to the issue of race in America.
Yes.
And she speaks about it very frankly and says, in direct sort of rebuke to Chief Justice Roberts, who has said before, the way to stop discrimination
is to stop discriminating.
Exactly. And she speaks directly to that and says, no, the way to stop discrimination is to speak candidly and frankly about race matters in this country.
And to confront it.
Exactly.
She's used that word.
And then there's a really, I thought, rather unusual separate concurrence that the Chief Justice wrote. So Justice Kennedy wrote the majority or the plurality decision that Chief Justice Roberts joined. But then he added this sort of like half a page long concurrence that is really a direct response to Sotomayor saying, we're not out of touch with reality and don't accuse us of being that way. Yeah. So it's this really interesting and very fierce battle between two very different views of the law, the Constitution, and race in America and its reality.
We've seen the numbers. CBS reported last night in states that have overturned affirmative action, like Michigan, like California, like Florida, the percentage of racial minorities on campuses, at the great university campuses, is down as much as 25%. So there's no doubt that without affirmative action, you're going to see that happen. And there's also, would you agree, there's no doubt that this is a green light for state after state after state to do the same thing that Michigan did?
It certainly is a green light. And, I think that it's probably even an encouragement in some way for states to do that. And Justice Sotomayor notes that, yes, this has a big impact on enrollment in these state universities. And it puts students and supporters of race-conscious admissions policies at a disadvantage, because if you want to go in and lobby admissions officials at a university for policies related to legacies or athletics or geography, you can do that.
Yeah.
But now, with respect just to this issue
of race,
you can't do that. You have to change the Constitution of the state in order to do that.
Isn't it interesting? One of our callers earlier this morning pointed out that it seems that the courts, not the Supreme Court yet, but the courts on the issue of marriage equality are moving toward saying, states, you have to allow same-sex marriage in your state. You cannot ban it. And yet on this issue, they're going toward the states saying, yeah, but you can deny affirmative action. So they're two opposite directions.
Yeah, so this is really interesting, I think, and especially because the decision in the Michigan case yesterday is written by Justice Kennedy, who many people expect to be, the important voice when it comes to marriage equality.
Exactly.
And if you recall from the Perry case, this is the one dealing with Prop 8 in California, The Supreme Court avoided getting to the merits of the case because it said that the backers of Prop 8 didn't have the legal right
legal
to
standing.
defend it in court.
Yeah, right.
But Kennedy wrote a dissent from that ruling, sort of extolling the proposition process as, you know, this instance of democracy, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think, again, what you get to is this underlying point that it's about what the voters are deciding. And when it comes to prohibitions on marriage equality, I think Kennedy will say, well, what they're deciding, what they're voting in is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
But under Kennedy's view, when they're voting in bans on race-conscious admissions policies, that's okay.
Yeah, fascinating. And again, just a disturbing decision, I believe, by the Supreme Court. I see Elizabeth Wydra is here from the Constitutional Accountability Center. It's the usconstitution.org for a lot more on this case. Now, is it a crime to call my opponent a murderer if I'm running against him or her for governor? Oh, in Ohio it is. What the court say about that? We'll be back with Elizabeth.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork. Loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At 26 minutes after the hour, the Reverend William Barber from the NAACP in North Carolina, founder of the Moral Mondays movement, up in the next segment of the program right now. Elizabeth Wydra is here from the Constitutional Accountability Center talking about yesterday's big Supreme Court activity. So, Elizabeth, the court heard arguments on two cases yesterday. One in Ohio, where it's a crime to tell a lie in politics. So when Richard Nixon said, "I am not a crook," bingo, you could accuse. Is it a crime? What's that look like?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting case. I think very few people expect truth in political campaigns, but there is a law in Ohio that makes it a crime to make a sort of recklessly false statement about the voting record of a candidate. So we have this group that is opposed to abortion trying to put up a billboard against this Ohio congressman saying that he voted for taxpayer-funded abortions. There was a dispute about whether or not that was true. The billboards never went up. So that's sort of one of the issues that might keep us from getting to the really interesting and juicy First Amendment questions is that there's a possibility that there wouldn't actually have been any enforcement of the law in this case. But what's important when you come to First Amendment free speech questions is the chilling effect. So the courts have allowed people to come in and even before they've been convicted or indicted for a speech crime to say, you're even chilling my speech by having this law out there and the possibility that I might be prosecuted for this. Yeah.
Well, so they may not be standing there, which they'd never get to the basic argument. Yeah. Which is too bad because we have to debate. This is worthy of debate. Yes. I mean, if you can't lie in politics,
what are you going to say?
Right. What's politics all about, right?
You might actually have a mature civil discussion.
God forbid. Elizabeth White, great to talk to you. So we never got to that second case. So go to usconstitution.org.
This
Thanks, Elizabeth.
is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot. I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right,
I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we go at 33 minutes after the hour now. Happy Wednesday morning, April 23rd. The Bill Press Show coming to you live from our nation's capital and booming out to you on all your progressive talk radio stations around the country. Happy to be with you all. Look forward to visiting with all of you from time to time, whether Chicago or Ithaca, New York, or Denver or Madison, and out there. And one of the places we particularly love to visit it is Asheville, North Carolina. Our good friends at 880 The Revolution in Asheville. A lot of good things come out of North Carolina. And last year, a movement called Moral Mondays originated in Raleigh, North Carolina, around the state legislature, a movement that not only inspired the people of North Carolina, but has inspired an entire nation. And we are very proud to welcome to the program this morning the founder of the Moral Mondays movement, the president of the North Carolina State Conference of the NAACP, the Reverend Dr. William Barber III, to our program this morning. Reverend Barber, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bill, and good morning to all your listeners. Now, is it William as well, or is Bill, William for Bill for short?
I'm Bill.
Okay, Bill. All right.
We all have to call him Mr. Press, right?
Oh, you have to call him Mr. Press. Oh, okay.
So, Reverend, what prompted the Moral Monday movement? What was a spark that got it started?
Well, it's important for you to know this movement is built on about 6 years of distinct organizing in the South and North Carolina, even when Democrats were in office. But what prompted us to escalate to civil disobedience when now nearly 1,000 people have been arrested and thousands upon thousands of people have joined, and almost 100,000 people, some estimates say, in February, was this extreme, what we call extremism on steroids. When the governor and the supermajority of Tea Party extremists, notice I will not call them Republicans because they don't live up to the legacy of their founder, Abraham Lincoln, or their other founder, Teddy Roosevelt. They came into office and they attempted to roll back every victory our coalition had won. They attacked democracy at its core by attacking voting rights. They passed a bill that cut 500,000 people access to Medicaid expansion, 170,000 people's unemployment. They took that. They cut taxes for 11% of the state and raised it on 89%. They even took 900,000 people's earned income tax credit, something that Ronald Reagan supported.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you do make Ronald Reagan look like a liberal, you're pretty extreme. And based on that, we said we had to have a movement that began to discuss not left and right, but the moral center, that would lift up the deepest values of our Constitution and our moral convictions, that would critique this policy, not just being bad policy, but extreme, immoral, constitutionally inconsistent, morally indefensible, and economically insane. And we would add to that a commitment to civil disobedience if the extremists tried to shut down our voices.
And what kind of people were you able to get to participate? I mean, you're head of the NAACP, but you must have had help from a lot of other organizations.
Well, one of the things that people forget in terms of history is that the NAACP, from its genesis, was quite diverse. Whites and blacks. Whites were primarily in the leadership 104 years ago. So we just modeled fusion politics from the 1800s, from the founding of the NAACP, and fusion politics of the 1960s. We got blacks, we got whites, we got Latinos, we had gay, we had straight, we had people of faith, people not of faith, but who believe in a moral universe. We had Republicans, we had Democrats, we had independents, we had multimillionaire business people standing beside unemployed workers, doctors standing beside the uninsured, people with insurance who engage in civil disobedience because they care about those who don't have insurance, parents and teachers. In other words, we had America there. We had North Carolina there. We had people from every different aspect, because extremism, once you isolate extremism, you give room, you make space for people to reach to something deeper. And that's why we didn't say if you're left, come, if you're, progressive, come. We say, do you care about our deepest moral values, like caring for your neighbor?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the word I think that struck me and that struck a lot of people, Reverend Barber, is the extra dimension here. It's moral Monday. I mean, that there is a moral dimension, and some of the things that this particular legislature and others are doing is immoral.
It is. And all you have to do is look at our constitutional preamble, establishing justice, promoting the general welfare. Think about how inconsistent it is. We made welfare a bad word, and welfare is in the preamble of our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Our deepest moral value is love, justice. If you take the Bible, the extreme religious right says the moral issues are abortion, homosexuality, and prayer in the school. Well, first of all, there are only about 6 scriptures in my particular faith that even deal with those issues. 5 of them they misinterpret, and none of them have anything to do with allowing you not to love a person and to care about a person and protect the rights of people. But there are hundreds, literally hundreds of scriptures that deal with the issue of justice in all of our faith traditions. We are saying it's time out for this bifurcated conversation about morals. And we actually say, if you want a moral debate, bring it on. It's time for us to stop running from that and to say to people we have to go deeper.
To which I say, amen. Yes, indeed.
Bring it on.
Have you seen any? You've got a governor and a state legislature that are pretty hidebound on the other side. Have you seen any impact here? We've had major victories. Let me tell you something. Yeah.
First of all, the goal of a moral movement, if you look down through history, every major transformation in this country, ending of slavery, dealing with Social Security, the war on poverty, the Civil Rights Movement, all had this moral center. And the first goal of a moral movement is to shift the center of debate and to shift the consciousness. So when we started, the governor was at 50%. Now he's under 30 and falling in the polls.
Yeah.
When we started, the legislature was over 40%. Now they're under 19 and falling. Some polls lift the issues of moral Monday at 58%. As you said, it is a miracle in the South, I use that language, for the NAACP to be leading an effort, and 60-some% of the persons coming happen to be white. That scares those who believe in the so-called white Southern strategy, because it opens up a whole different demographic of voting and participation and moving together. We've seen, just recently, I stood with the Republican mayor in Belhaven, whose hospital was being closed because of the denial of Medicaid expansion. He called on us and said, listen, I'm a Republican, but I'm not one of these extremists.
Yeah.
We need to be accepting Medicaid. In fact, we won keeping that hospital open and found some new avenues together. The judge in North Carolina, the federal judge, when the legislature said they weren't going to turn over the records of how they passed the worst voter suppression bill in the country, said, oh, no, you don't get legislative immunity. Turn over the records. Another judge, when they passed a bill to take $10 million from public schools and give it to private schools, said, oh, no, I'm enjoining that because the North Carolina Constitution says you can only use public money for public schools. So we are beginning to see certain victories. We will see more as people go to the polls and do other things. But the greater victory is the shifting of the center of gravity in both the consciousness and the debate. That's the real value of this kind of movement.
Now, Reverend Barber, you have a lot of challenges, particularly there in North Carolina. But the things you talk about are not limited to North Carolina. Outrages like this, extremism is popping up in state after state after state. And we see a little bit of it here in the United States Congress as well.
And the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court. Thank you. Look at yesterday. Right. Is this a movement that can, grow nationwide? Are you talking about that? Any conversations?
Our argument is this.
Let's have Moral Mondays in every state capital.
Well, we should. And in fact, they're moving across the state. Missouri is breaking out, Arkansas, Wisconsin, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina has Truthful Tuesdays. We're getting calls of that nature. Florida, Virginia now has a People's Assembly movement. Here's what we believe. We believe this for 7 years, even before now. Whether Democrats, Republican in office, we need an independent movement in states because some of the greatest things happening to us to turn the clock back is in state capitals.
Absolutely.
It needs to be homegrown indigenous leadership, focused on state government. We need to have a deep moral and constitutional critique, a movement that is anti-racism, anti-poverty, rooted in transformative coalitions, not just transactional coalitions. And the 5 areas that we believe we must fight together on have to do with securing pro-labor, anti-poverty policies, educational equality, health care for all, fairness in the criminal justice system, and protecting and expanding voting rights, women's rights, LGBT rights, and immigrant rights, and the principle of equal protection under the law. Those 5 areas galvanize what we call fusion coalition. And Bill, the model for that is that we're in the middle, I believe, of a third Reconstruction. And if you look at the first Reconstruction in the 1800s and the second Reconstruction in the 1960s, after a few years, it was always met with a very committed deconstruction. Deconstruction. So when you see, for instance, what the Supreme Court did yesterday, go to the same Supreme Court in 1883 when they rolled back the Civil Rights Act of 1875. Almost a similar argument, and there was one dissent, John Holden out of Kentucky. Same thing with Plessy versus Ferguson. So what we're seeing is almost kind of a social physics. This nation always goes forward, then we have a hiccup. We have construction, reconstruction, and then we have these forces of deconstruction. 1800, it was the so-called redemption movement that said we got to take America back from all of the relationships of blacks and whites working together. 1968, it was a whites Southern strategy, led by Kevin Phillips and Nixon. And now it's the Tea Party movement. And so we have to understand that history informs us. Past this prologue, we must have moral movement. It's the only movement that can challenge these efforts at deconstruction.
And, we must counter that, and we must have leadership to counter that, which is why your voice is so important, Reverend Barber. I can't tell you how exciting it is, what you're doing, how much we need you out there nationwide. I mean, you are doing the Lord's work for which we thank you and we salute you. And I can't wait to come down to Raleigh and join you one of these days.
May 19th, we'll be back at the Capitol. But understand, when they left the state Capitol, we followed them. We've had more than 114 Moral Monday events. Now, all of them went on Monday since last April. This is the 1-year anniversary next week.
They can run, but they can't hide,
they cannot hide. That's the point. Build it from the state. Build it up from the bottom.
You got it. Thanks so much, Reverend Barber.
God bless you. Take care.
All right. Thank you. I got to tell you, I'd follow that man anywhere.
I'm telling you, man.
He is the real deal. I
listen to just about anything he has to say.
Absolutely. He is absolutely right on. And, you want a moral debate? Bring it on, Bubba. Yeah, we got Reverend Barber on our side.
This is the Bill Press Show.
single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act. Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
11 minutes before the top of the hour, Wednesday, April 23rd. Wrapping up our Wednesday edition here of The Bill Press Show. Peter?
Great little story, because I mentioned earlier in the show, just blocks away last night, Albert Pujols made history right here in Washington, D.C. He hit his 500th home run.
And I told you, nobody told me he was going to hit that 500th home run. I would have gone to the game. Well, I mean, what the hell?
Tom
we have
Sherrill.
friends in town. We would all gone to Nats Park. And
Yeah, I know, right?
And seen history.
They should have really promoted that better. Tom Sherrill is a California native. He was in D.C. this week for Air Force training, and he and some of his fellow servicemen bought tickets to go to the game last night. He is the one who caught lucky number 500.
Oh, wow.
He watched him hit 499, and he moved seats because he said, I have a feeling if he hits another one, it's going to go in that general area. So he just moved seats.
So it's sort of like the same place?
Same area. He went over there. Ball came.
God.
Another man tried to catch it. It bounced off of him and into the hands of Tom Sherrill. Now, he can make a lot of money off of that ball. But that's not what he did. He gave the ball back to Albert Pujols. Cyprian with the booze.
Yeah. Oh, no. That was the right thing to do. I hope Pujols will give him some money for it.
Well, he's not going to give him money necessarily, but what they're going to do is the Angels gave him a baseball cap. And Pujols gave him a sign, and he got to go down to the clubhouse and meet Albert Pujols after the game. He gave him an autographed baseball, not the one that was number 500, but he gave him an autographed ball. And the Angels got his information. Presumably, they're going to reach out to him later on and give him some more swag. but he's not going to pay him the kind of money he could have made by selling it.
Where's he from in California?
I don't know in California. It just says.
I was just wondering if he's north or south, because if he's north, he's not going to be going to many Angels games.
That's true.
Wow,
that's true.
What a great evening for him.
Pomona, California.
Oh, that's not too far.
About 30 minutes from Anaheim.
No,
give him lifelong tickets for that,
Absolutely.
man.
Name the stadium after.
There you go.
Okay. Hey, just wanted to bring you up to date. Again, the president enjoying his sushi dinner in that tiny little sushi restaurant in Tokyo right now with the Prime Minister of Japan. Before he left, he did go out to Washington State, stopping yesterday in Oso, Washington, did a Marine One helicopter tour of that area, which is clobbered by the landslide about a month ago. And the president saluting the residents of that community and the great strength that they showed through the suffering that they encountered there.
Families that I met with showed incredible strength and grace through unimaginable pain and difficulty. Uniformly, though, they all wanted to say thank you to the first responders.
Indeed, and the president said, this is America. When you see people respond like this and bounce back, this is America at its best.
To see the strength in adversity of this community, I think, should inspire all of us. Because this is also what America's all about. When times get tough, we look out for each other.
And then the president hopping on Air Force One and off to Tokyo, the beginning of this week-long Asian trip that would take him to Japan, then to South Korea, to the Philippines, and to Malaysia. And with that, we'll wrap it up. I'll be back with a parting shot.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is The Bill Press Show.
And on this Wednesday, April 23rd, my parting shot for today, well, as if we needed it, we got even more evidence yesterday about the growing income gap, income inequality in this country. A new study shows that while we are still the world's richest large country, and while economic growth in the United States continues to be strong, only a small percentage of American families is actually benefiting from it. In other words, while the wealthiest Americans are outpacing wealthy families anywhere else on the planet, middle class and poor Americans are falling behind their peers in other countries. For the middle class, median income in the United States has been virtually unchanged since 2000, while median income in Britain shot up by 20%, also 20% in Canada, and 14% in the Netherlands. It's even worse for the poor. In America today, poor families make significantly less than poor families in Canada, Sweden, Norway, Finland, or the Netherlands. 35 years ago, it was just the opposite. You know that old saying, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Well, it is more true today than ever before. Imagine that. Poor people, middle-class people, making less here today than most other countries of the world. When are we going to do something about it? Let's start by raising the minimum wage, huh? Hey, Bob Cusack from The Hill will be here tomorrow as a friend of Bill. Have a great Wednesday, folks. See you back here again.
This is The Bill Press Show.